So Samsung is probably best known for its big, shiny, expensive S-series flagship phones and those bendy blowers that fold and flip. But in a cost of living crisis, not all of us have the best part of a grand to spunk out on a smartphone, which is where the A-series comes in. This here Samsung Galaxy A23 5G costs just 289 quid here in Blighty. And yet it boasts some solid software support, a big old 6.6-inch 120Hz display, some respectable gaming grunt, a mighty 5000 mAh battery, 50 megapixel primary camera, and some features you won't even find on Samsung's mega expensive handsets like expandable storage and a 3.5mm headphone jack. But of course, to hit that sub £300 asking price, some sacrifices have to be made. So is the Samsung Galaxy A23 a bit of alright, or is it just a massive turd sandwich? Well, let's whip it on out the box, take you on a full tour of the hardware and the software, test out the camera, the game and all that good stuff. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So what are you actually getting bundled in that box besides Samsung's Galaxy A23 5G? Well, pretty much bugger all really. You've got a pokey pin device so you can stick your SIM card inside. And frankly, thrilling bit of quick start guide action. And a USB-C cable, and that is basically it. It's probably not massively shocking that they didn't have space in this tiny little box for a power adapter or a plastic protective case or anything like that. But still, a little bit stingy. Or environmentally friendly, if you want to take another perspective. So anyway, here's the Galaxy A23 5G in all of its glory, and it may be cheap, but it certainly ain't no titch at 6.6 inches. Thankfully, despite its gargantuan size, this smartphone isn't too hefty, weighs 197 grams, and you do at least have a one-handed mode as well. It certainly helps out if you're carrying a load of shit or trying to keep control of a small child or something. Not exactly the skinniest bezels surrounding that mighty display there, especially down below. It's got a bit of a lip on it, but nothing too bad. Flip it around and the back end of the Galaxy A23 5G is a simple matte plastic finish. Basically the same as all A-series Galaxy smartphones, and plastic is pretty standard for this sort of price point. And thanks to that matte finish, at least the back end doesn't seem to pick up greasy prints or scuffs too easily. You've got a respectable choice of colours here, albeit with slightly over-enthusiastic names as usual. Awesome black, awesome white, awesome blue, or orange. Why just orange? Why not awesome orange? All the other colours are apparently awesome. Is this Samsung basically admitting that the orange colour is shit and should never have happened? But yeah, overall Samsung's design is simple but inoffensive. You've got the plastic edge in the same colour as that back end, so it all matches up. And the camera section doesn't jut too far from that arse end, so that's nice to see. On the software side, what you get here is Android 12. Not quite the latest, freshest Android 13, but that should be coming soon. And you've got Samsung's own OneUI 4.1 launcher slathered all over the top of that. And Samsung's usually pretty good when it comes to the software updates, and reassuringly, once again, with the A23, it is offering at least 3 years of OS and security updates. The security patching is bang up to date on this bad boy. And anyone who's used a Samsung OneUI smartphone in the past will be right at home here. You know exactly what to expect, including of course all of Samsung's usual apps slapped on top here. You've got smart things for connecting to all your smart home gadgetry, Samsung Pay for your contactless payments, Samsung Health if you want to do jogging or gym stuff. And you also get a few apps slapped on here that you certainly did not ask for, the likes of Facebook and bloody LinkedIn again. To be fair though, Samsung isn't as bad as some manufacturers. And then if you dive on into the settings, you'll find all the usual great Android features, some excellent personalization, including the ability to change up the UI colors to match your wallpaper. Then you've got a few Samsung-only efforts courtesy of OneUI, such as the battery and device care, which can just give your phone a bit of a health check. But anyway, I won't bang on at length about those OneUI features because I have done you a full OneUI 4 tips and tricks guide, which shows off some of the best bits chucked in there, so go check that out if you want to know more. As for the storage, well, apparently with the Galaxy A23 5G, you've got a choice of either 64 or 128 gigs of space. But on the Samsung UK website, the only option I could find was the 64 giga. That's not a massive problem though, because one of the benefits of going for a more affordable Samsung Galaxy smartphone is the fact that you do actually have support for micro SD memory cards. So you can expand that storage quickly and easily up to a full terabyte here on the Galaxy A23. And as an added bonus, the micro SD memory card slot is actually separate to the SIM slot, so you can have a memory card and 2 SIMs all slapped in there simultaneously. And Samsung has once again chucked its Knox security software suite on here as well, so lots of great security features, and you do have an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor, and despite the fact that that dinky power button is pretty skinny, it certainly seems nice and responsive. And the Samsung Galaxy A23 also supports face unlock as well, although this ain't too hot when the lighting conditions aren't exactly great. Now, Samsung doesn't usually disappoint when it comes to smartphone displays, and the A23 serves up a 6.6-inch LCD panel. It's not OLED, unfortunately, unlike some rivals like the Motorola Moto G82, the OnePlus Nord CE2, etc. That does mean that you don't get an always-on display option here. Sadly, it also means that contrast levels aren't quite as strong as what you'll find on some of the competition. But all the same, considering it isn't OLED, this isn't a bad panel. Blacks are still reasonably black and colours are reasonably poppy. The viewing angles are okay, and if you take it outside on a sunny day, the peak brightness can just about handle that glare. And despite having a Godzilla-sized screen, the Full HD Plus resolution means those visuals are kept reasonably crisp. When you do go full screen for your games, your movies, whatever, you do have a dinky wee nipple notch just poking its way into the action a bit, but it's nowhere near as dramatic as an Apple iPhone notch, for instance. Dive on into the display settings and you've got all the usual features, including adaptive brightness. You've got an eye comfort shield mode, which can make things nice and warm, just make things a bit more comfortable on your peepers when you're doom scrolling at 3 AM. And the A23's display can also be boosted all the way up to 120Hz refresh for a nice silky smooth finish when required. Unfortunately, when it comes to the audio, Samsung is once again lagging behind some rivals with a basic mono speaker output. All of your sound is chuffed out of this dinky wee speaker here on the bottom edge. But maybe the sound doesn't suck, so let's give it a go.
Which, as you can see there, can change up your colour schemes, your fonts, your icons, all that good stuff based on the actual colours of your wallpaper.
You know what, to be fair, that isn't too bad at all for a mono speaker setup. Gets pretty loud at that peak volume, and also the audio that's baffed out isn't too tinny, even when you ramp it all the way up to the maximum levels. And if you jump on into the sounds section of the settings, you do actually have Dolby Atmos support, as you can see there, as long as you are hooked up with some supported headphones or a speaker. And hallelujah, yes indeed, you do get a 3.5mm headphone jack here on the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, which is pretty much unheard of most of the Samsung smartphones these days. No, actually just most of the smartphones, full stop. But if you don't want to use a wide connection, if you want to go wireless, we do have Bluetooth 5.1 streaming here on the A23 as well, and that seems to do the job fine as well. Now, running the show on the Galaxy A23 is Qualcomm's Snapdragon 695 chipset, as found on several mid-range Motorola's, the Nokia G60, etc. But here on Samsung's blow, that is backed by just 4 gigs of RAM, and I do think that is detrimental to performance. I have seen a fair bit of janky behaviour from the A23. Sometimes apps will take a little while to load up, or your pokes and prods just don't seem to be as responsive as they should be. It just doesn't seem as smooth an experience as what I got on other smartphones using that exact same Snapdragon chipset. That said, as long as you're patient, then the Galaxy A23 5G will do what you need it to. Even a bit of gaming on the side as well if you fancy pummeling the living daylights out of weird little walkie creatures that live in forests. Or maybe just blowing some nice meaty chunky holes in some complete stranger. Samsung has once again included its game launcher tool here on the Galaxy A23 5G. This gives you fast access to any games you've got installed on there. You've also got the priority mode, which you can tap just to dedicate all of the phone's resources to your games, give them the best fighting chance of running smoothly. Although, to be honest, with this active here on the A23, I didn't really notice any real difference. Games like Call of Duty Mobile, fast-paced online action titles run absolutely fine, so you've got a good chance of actually kneecapping your opponents before they blow your brains out. And that was even when I jacked up the graphics levels to the higher detail settings as well. That frame rate stayed consistently smooth, the screen is nice and responsive as well. And since a lot of other Snapdragon 695 phones can run a good bit of Genshin Impact, albeit on lower detail settings, I thought I'd give that a go here on the A23 as well. And again, it ran alright. Some definite judders and jitters at times, even on those lowest graphics settings, but overall it did remain playable. And even if you are gaming for a good hour or two, the good news is that the Galaxy A23 won't heat up. You've got that energy efficient chipset and everything on there, so no worries whatsoever with the thermals. And while I did find that the Wi-Fi download speeds weren't exactly fantastic here on the Galaxy A23, at least you do have full 5G support for when you go off roaming in the wild. As for the battery life, well, you've got a 5000 mAh capacity cell crammed inside of this plastic frame. And that means all day play, no worries, again, especially because that Snapdragon 695 is so energy efficient. So you'll get hours and hours of screen on time, even if you're streaming media, doing a good bit of gaming, playing with that camera tech, all the good stuff. And when you want to recharge the Galaxy A23, you've got 25-watt wired charging support, although of course no power adapter bundled in the box. Cheers Samsung, so you'll have to provide your own. Hopefully you've still got a decent brick left over from your previous smartphone. To take full advantage of that 25-watt charging ability, you just have to make sure that fast charging is ticked in the more battery settings section. And last up, the camera tech, and what you have here is a 50 megapixel primary camera sensor with optical image stabilization built in. And again, if you've used a Samsung smartphone at any point in the near past, well, you'll know exactly what to expect from the general camera UI. Because of the more basic hardware, you don't have as many camera bonus features packed in here. You've got the likes of the portrait mode with the adjustable bokeh action. If you jump on into more, you've got a full-on pro mode, so you can piddle about with the likes of the white balance, the ISO levels. And of course you've got a full-on night mode and the obligatory food mode as well. But that's pretty much it. Quite a lot of the usual extras are missing in action. And I've got to say, pretty basic camera performance here in general as well. That 50 meg primary camera sensor is all right as long as the lighting's fine, but in strong contrast and in more ambient light, it really does shit the bed. Oh, and the camera's completely frozen on me. Great stuff. And even when the camera doesn't freeze, that shutter speed is pretty lethargic. So if you are shooting a living subject, chances are you might just miss that perfect moment because you can't just tap, tap, tap and get lots of quick fire shots away. And while you do have 3 other cameras to choose from here, they're all pretty basic / superfluous. So you've got a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter with 123-degree field of view. And the last 2 are basic macro and depth sensors. If you want to shoot a bit of home movie action on your Galaxy A23 5G, well sadly it only supports Full HD or standard HD resolution capture, no 4K option here, which is pretty poor for a £300 smartphone. There's some test video I shot just the last 24 hours, and again the Galaxy A23 struggles in lower light. You will end up with quite grainy footage. The stabilization's alright and the audio pickup is okay too. And then swap around to the front-facing shooter, and again you'll want to manage your expectations because it's a pretty basic 8 megapixel selfie snapper. Again, fine as long as the lighting's alright, but in dimmer conditions you do end up with quite grainy looking pictures. And it's not the best performer when it comes to strong contrast either. And if you want to use the Samsung Galaxy A23 for a bit of Skyping, Zooming, Microsoft Teams, and if you're a bit weird, well, it'll do the job. It can capture Full HD resolution footage using that front-facing selfie snapper. Again, the audio pickup is alright. And that right there is my full unboxing and hands-on review with Samsung's Galaxy A23 5G. And unfortunately, it is beaten by a lot of big mid-range rivals when it comes to the media chops, the camera tech, and the performance. If you're a die-hard Samsung fan, you use all of those Samsung services, at least you can get them here in a more affordable package. But I would say if you're not particularly bothered about having a Samsung blower, definitely check out my roundup of the best sub £300 smartphones you can grab yourself right now for a list of alternatives. If you're rocking the Samsung Galaxy A23 yourself or another £300 smartphone that you'd highly recommend, then definitely let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do plug, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a really wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.